Edgar Allan Poe is considered to be the father of American Gothic horror, which mostly consists of some psychological, let's call it, irregularity within his protagonists. While his settings are always an important figure within his tales, his protagonists are always highly interested in some specific aspect of their surroundings. Take in point Hiram Sinclair, who has a tale to tell.
True. Nervous. Very, very dreadfully nervous. I have been and am. But why will you say that I am mad? The disease has sharpened my senses, not destroyed, not dulled them. Above all else was the sense of hearing acute. I heard all the things in the heavens and in the earth. I heard many things in hell. How then am I mad, huh? Hearken and observe how healthily, how calmly I can tell you the whole story. It is impossible to say how the idea first entered my brain, but once conceived, it haunted me day and night. Object, there was none. Passion, there was none. I loved the old man. He had never wronged me. He'd never given me insult. For his gold, I had no desire. I think it was his eye. Yes, it was this. One of his eyes resembled that of a vulture, a pale blue eye with a film over it. Whenever it fell upon me, my blood ran cold. And so, by degrees, very gradually, I made up my mind to take the life of the old man, and thus rid myself of the eye forever. Now, okay, this is the point. You fancy me mad. Madmen know nothing. But you should have seen me. You should have seen how wisely I proceeded, with what caution, with what foresight, with what dissimulation I went to work. I was never kinder to that old man than the whole week before I killed him. And every night, about midnight, I turned the latch on his door and opened it. So gently. And then, when I had made an opening sufficient for my head, I put in a dark lantern, all closed, so that no light shone out. And then, I thrust in my head. You would have laughed to see how cunningly I thrust it in. I moved it slowly, very, very slowly, so as not to disturb the old man's sleep. It took me an hour to place my whole head so far within the opening that I could see him as he lay upon his bed. Would a madman have been so wise as this? And then, when my head was well into the room, I undid the lantern, cautiously, for the hinges creaked, until I undid it just so much that a single thin ray fell upon the vulture eye. And this I did for 7 long nights. Every night, just at midnight. But I found the eye always closed, and so it was impossible to do the work. For it was not the old man who vexed me, but his evil eye. And every morning, when day broke, I went boldly into the chamber and spoke courageously to him, calling him by name in a hearty tone and inquiring how he had passed the night. And so you see, he would have had to have been a very profound old man indeed to suspect that every night, just at 12, I looked in upon him while he slept. Upon the 8th night, I was more than usually cautious when opening the door. A watch's minute hand moves more quickly than did mine. Never since before that night, or never before that night, had I felt the extent of my own power, of my sagacity. I could scarcely contain my feelings of triumph. I mean, to think that there I was, opening that door little by little, and he not even to dream of my secret deeds or thoughts. I fairly chuckled at the idea. And perhaps he heard me, for he moved suddenly on the bed as if startled. Now, you may think that I drew back, but no. The room was black as pitch, with a thick darkness, for the shutters were closed fastened through fear of robbers, and so I knew that he could not see the opening of the door, and so I kept pushing it on steadily. Now, I had my head in, and was about to open the lantern when my thumb slipped upon the tin fastening, and the old man sprang up in the bed, crying out, "Who's there?" I kept quite still and said nothing. For a whole hour I dared not move a muscle, and in the meantime I did not hear him lie down. He was still sitting up in the bed, listening, just as I have done, night after night, hearkening to the death watches on the wall. Presently I heard a slight groan, and I knew that that was the groan of mortal terror. This was not the groan of pain or of grief. Oh, no. No, this was the low, stifled sound that arises from the bottom of one's soul when overcharged with awe. I knew that sound well. Many a night, just at midnight, when all the world was asleep, it has welled up from my own bosom, deepening with its dreadful echo the terrors that distracted me. I say I knew it well. I knew what the old man felt, and I pitied him. But I chuckled at heart. I knew that he had been lying awake ever since that first slight noise when he had turned in the bed. His fears had been ever since growing upon him. He's been trying to fancy them causeless, but could not. He'd been trying to say to himself that it is nothing but the wind in the chimney, or it is only a mouse crossing the floor, or it is merely a cricket which has let out a single chirp. Yes, he had been trying to comfort himself with these suppositions, but he had found all in vain. All in vain, because death, in approaching, had stalked with his black shadow before him and enveloped the victim. And it was the mournful influence of this unperceived shadow which caused him to feel, though he could neither see nor hear, but to feel my presence within the room. Yeah. Now, when I had waited a long time, very patiently, without hearing him lie down, I resolved to open a very, very little crevice in the lantern. So I opened it. You cannot imagine how stealthily, until at length, like the thread of the spider, a single dim ray shot from out of the crevice and fell upon the vulture eye. It was open! Wide open! And I grew furious as I gazed upon it. I saw it all with a perfect distinctness. It was a dull pale blue with a hideous veil over it that chilled the very marrow in my bones. But I could see nothing else of the old man's face or person, for I had, as if by instinct, directed the ray precisely upon the damned spot. And now have I not told you that what you mistake for madness is but an overacuteness of the senses? Well, there came upon my ears a low, dull, quick sound, such as a watch makes when enveloped in cotton. It was the beating of the old man's heart, and it increased my fury, such as a beating of a drum excites a soldier into courage. But even still, I refrained and scarcely breathed. I held the lantern motionless. I tried how steadily I could maintain the ray upon the eye. But meantime, that hellish tattoo of the heart, it increased. It grew quicker and quicker and louder and louder. Oh, the old man's terror must have been extreme. It grew louder, I say, louder every moment. Do you mark me well? I've told you that I am nervous, and so I am. And now, at the dead hour of the night, amid the dreadful silence of that old home, so strange a sound as this excited me into an uncontrollable terror. But even yet, I refrained and I stood still. But the beating grew louder, louder. I thought the heart must burst, and now a new anxiety seized me. The sound would be heard by a neighbor. The old man's hour had come. With a loud yell, I threw open the lantern and I leaped into the room. He shrieked once only. In an instant, I dragged him onto the floor and I pulled the heavy bed on top of him. I then smiled gaily to find the deed so far done. But for many minutes, the heart beat on with a muffled sound. But this did not vex me. It would not be heard through the wall. At length, it ceased. The old man was dead. I removed the bed and examined the corpse. Yes, he was stone dead. I placed my hand upon the heart and held it there for many minutes. I felt no pulsation. The old man was dead, and his eye would trouble me no more. If you still think me mad, you will think so no longer when I describe to you the wise precautions I took in the concealment of the body. The night waned. So I worked hastily, but in silence. First of all, I dismembered the corpse. I cut off the head, and then the arms, and then the legs. I then took up 3 planks from the flooring of the chamber and deposited all between the scantlings. I then replaced the boards so cunningly, so craftily, that no human eye, not even his, could have detected anything wrong. There was nothing to wash out. No blood spot, whatever, no stain of any kind. I had been too wary for that. A tub caught all. When I had made an end to these labors, it was 4 o'clock, still dark as midnight, and as the bell sounded the hour, there came a knocking at the street door. I went down to open it with a light heart, for what had I now to fear? There entered 3 gentlemen who introduced themselves with a perfect suavity as officers of the police. A shriek had been heard by a neighbor during the night. Suspicion of foul play had been aroused. Information had been lodged at the police office, and the officers, had been deputed to search the premises. I smiled. What had I to fear? I bade the gentleman welcome. The shriek, I said, was mine in a dream. The old man, I mentioned, was absent in the country. I took them all over the house. I bade them search, and search well. I led them at length to his chamber. I showed them his treasures, secure, undisturbed. In the enthusiasm of my confidence, I brought chairs into the room and desired them here to rest from their fatigues. In the wild audacity of my perfect triumph, I placed my own seat upon the very spot beneath which the victim's corpse reposed. The officers were satisfied. My manner had convinced them. I was singularly at ease. And they sat, and while I answered cheerily, they chatted of familiar things. But ere long, I felt myself growing pale and just wished them to go. My head ached, and I fancied a ringing in my ears. But still they sat, and still chatted. The ringing became more distinct. It continued and became more distinct. I talked more freely to get rid of the feeling, but it continued and gained definitiveness until at last I found that the noise was not within my ears. No doubt I now grew very pale, but I talked more fluently and with a heightened voice, but still the sound increased. And what could I do? It was the low, dull, quick sound, such as a watch makes when enveloped in cotton. I gasped for breath, and yet the officer started not. I talked more quickly, more vehemently, but the noise steadily increased. Oh, I arose and argued about trifles in a high key with violent gesticulations, but the noise steadily increased. Oh, I paced to and fro with heavy strides, as if excited to fury by the observations of the men, but the noise steadily increased. Oh, God, what could I do? I foamed. I raved, I swore, I swung the chair upon which I'd been sitting and grated across the floor. But the noise steadily and overall increased and continually got louder and louder and louder, and still all the men just chatted pleasantly and smiled. Was it possible they heard it not? Almighty God, no, they heard, they suspected, they knew. They were making a mockery of my horror. This I thought, and this I think, but anything was better than this agony. Anything was more tolerable than this derision. I felt I could bear those hypocritical smiles no more. I had to scream or die, and now again. Louder. Rollins! Disassemble no more! I admit the deed. Tear up the planks here! Here! It is the beating of his hideous heart!